This is the kind of thing that is playing out all over conservative media. I just want to do a little bit of record correcting. There's not record crime right now. Number one, Harris was put in charge, as you said earlier, of combating the roots of immigration. She was not and is not the border czar.
She was never assigned the position of border czar. They're making that up.
Quote unquote border czar. Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People are going to have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her to work on kind of the root causes of immigration.
There has been so much criticism against Kamala Harris. You know, she was the border czar.
Calling her sort of the border czar, which wasn't necessarily the case.
So the border, if they weren't planning to address it in a major way, do not make her your border czar. She met with some of the Northern Triangle countries, but nothing has effectively changed.
I've never seen a propaganda campaign anything like this. This isn't gaslighting. This is a full-on military-style PsyOp being launched on the American people. The media and the Democrats, actually one and the same, are executing an extremely sick propaganda campaign, a PsyOp, on the American people to protect and shield Kamala Harris. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. George Orwell's book, 1984, isn't merely a novel to these people. It has become their playbook. Orwell wrote in his book, 1984, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. What we are witnessing is pure evil. In my opinion, this is actually harmful to Americans who aren't smart enough, not astute enough to look around to understand they're being lied to. I can confirm with 100% certainty that Kamala Harris was indeed named the border czar by Joe Biden. And because of her catastrophic failure, and now that she's running for president, they are trying to memory hole anything about her being the border czar. They're trying to make it look like it never happened.
She was put in charge of the border.
Nope. She was in charge of reaching out to the South and Central American countries to stem the immigration.
She wasn't the border czar.
She was not actually the border czar.
She is not the border czar.
She was never border czar.
She was not the border czar.
Let's be very clear. There was no border czar.
President Biden put his vice president, Kamala Harris, in charge of one of his administration's growing challenges. She is now the point person on immigration.
Vice President Harris is now the Biden administration's point person
To oversee his administration's efforts to stem the flow of migrants.
Kamala Harris, the point person on immigration.
The point person in the effort to stop the flow of migrants.
Kamala Harris will lead the response to the border challenge.
Kamala Harris to lead the White House efforts to tackle migration challenges at the U.S.-Mexico border.
To take the lead on overseeing all of these efforts at the border.
Putting his vice president, Kamala Harris, in charge of this.
Her first big portfolio item.
To oversee solutions.
I have confidence that she's going to do a good job in this role. I think President Biden made a good decision, a wise move.
And the Biden administration did task Vice President Kamala Harris with the issue of migrant crossings, naming her the so-called border czar.
I've asked her, the VP, today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
You have to wonder to yourself, why are they trying to hide this from the American people? Why are they trying so aggressively to make it seem as though this is something that the Republicans conjured up and decided to stick the border czar moniker onto Kamala Harris? We all know it's not true. Actually, those of us who have looked at this information know it's not true, and you're going to know that's not true after this video. She was indeed the border czar. This is seriously wrong. And as I said, it's way beyond gaslighting. It's not even brainwashing at this point. It is now an actual full-on sanctioned PsyOp on the American people. For the media and the Democrats, as I said, one and the same, to be working so hard to memory hole this, to erase it from the internet, shows you how vulnerable Kamala Harris is to the catastrophic failure at the southern border. And they're having to do this right now because many times she has spoken about what she really feels about the newcomers coming across the southern border.
It is wrong to somehow suggest that an undocumented immigrant is a criminal. I've personally prosecuted everything from low-level offenses to homicides. I know what a crime looks like. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
Is that what you want to see America become? Well, if Kamala Harris has her way, if she were to become president, that's exactly what would happen in America. Unfortunately for her and the Dems, most Americans see the border situation as the #1 issue in this year's election. Too bad for Kamala. She ran her mouth over and over, and it's out there everywhere for people to see.
Must be addressed.
The bill also says, quote, every individual who is a resident of the United States is entitled to benefits for health care services under this act. Not every individual who's a citizen, but every individual who's a resident. So you support giving universal health care, Medicare for all, to people who are in this country illegally?
Let me just be very clear about this. I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being from access to public safety, public education, or public health, period.
Oh, we hear you loud and clear. And there are actually some people in the media who've called out Kamala Harris for not even caring what was happening at the southern border.
One other topic I wanted to talk to you about, but let me just quickly put a button.
Okay.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance of the border.
Well, I mentioned it because even I know Republicans have certainly come at you on this.
It was a joke, an absolute joke to her. She completely blew off doing anything about the millions of newcomers that were surging across the border. But now that she's become the chosen one and she's running for president, they have to make this go away. So the PsyOp was launched to scrub the internet, to erase everything, make it look like it never even happened. There are actually Democrats in Congress who were assisting in this PsyOp. That's how bad they have to make this thing go away. This tweet is from Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut. This isn't true. The Biden put Harris in charge of the border narrative is made up. No, it's not. Harris supported the bipartisan border security bill that would have fixed the problem. Trump killed it. Trump wasn't president. Border crossings are lower now than in Trump's last non-pandemic summer. Seriously? That's what you're going with? And other people in Congress, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's not letting them get away with this. Axios, one of the sites that's trying to erase everything, is editing articles from over 3 years ago. For over 3 years, Axios called Kamala Harris the border czar. But now they've gotten word from the DNC to whitewash the past to help elect her. It's communist-style state-run media at this point. It really is. And she shows something down here. Let me pull this up here. This is where they've gone back into their archives and completely scrubbed. They just taken away, eliminated everything about Kamala Harris being the border czar. Even Elon Musk, the owner of Twitter, has chimed in on this. Literally, as far left as it's possible to go, they're trying so hard to erase the internet. That's how crazy this entire thing is. They are actually out there on the internet, scrubbing stories, trying to make it all disappear so nobody sees how bad Kamala Harris really is. This is pretty funny what Ben Shapiro posted. Guys, Kamala Harris was never the border czar and also was not the most liberal senator in 2019. And from Men in Black, you know, the memory eraser, it never happened. Just go away, go do your life, live your life, it never happened. That's how bad things are right now. Now, I've got this thread I want to show you, which basically goes through everything that's been happening over the last couple of days. I don't expect that you've seen all of this, so I'm going to break it down for you. This is from a guy named Drew Holden, who's got his own Substack, and he's been following along. The media is already hard at work to mislead about Vice President Kamala Harris. The latest is an effort to memory hole Harris' role leading Biden's disastrous immigration policy as the border czar. Who's up for some side-by-sides, lest we forget? And he's going to go through and show you some things here. There's no better place to start with than Axios, who made waves today when they claimed that Harris was never the border czar. The problem? Axios had already called her that back in 2021. And so I'm going to click on the picture here so you can see it. The Trump campaign and Republicans have tagged Harris repeatedly with the border czar title, which she never actually had. That's what they just put out. However, Axios, even though they're trying to say that she wasn't the border czar, actually have a story from 2021 when they called her exactly that, the border czar for Joe Biden. And then he says here, they've added a truly Orwellian editor's note after the backlash, claiming that they had misreported initially. Really? Editor's note. This article has been updated and clarified to note that Axios was among the news outlets that incorrectly labeled Harris a border czar in 2021. Are you now going to say, after having something posted for 3 years, that it was just a mistake? It was a mistake 3 years ago. She wasn't really the border czar. Is that where you're going with this? Wow, that's evil. And here's the headline from March 24th, 2021. Biden puts Harris in charge of the border crisis. You can't get away. It's still out there. Well, it was out there, but people are having to screenshot things because they're out there brainwashing, doing all the propaganda they can do to basically save Kamala Harris. And he continues, it's not just Axios. One of my favorite was New York Times, who tried to explain why Republicans were misleading in tying Harris to the Biden's immigration policies. In 2021, they called Harris the face of President Biden's plan to bolster the region and deter migration. But now they're saying it's Republicans who are making up the entire thing, and she was never in charge of the border. Down here it says, White House border coordinator to step down. I mean, New York Times even said that the old border czar stepped down because Harris's new role as one of the administration's top border officials had eclipsed his position. So they acknowledged back then that this guy who was the old border czar lost his job because they put Kamala Harris in there. And then this one is one I absolutely love. The USA Today fact-checked the claim that Harris was in charge on immigration, despite a previous fact check where they said that Biden had tapped Harris to lead a federal effort to deter migrants. You can't make this up. They are feverishly out there trying to change everything that you already heard 3 years ago. They need to clean this up because Kamala Harris has a huge vulnerability. Let's continue. USA Today also said that Harris will lead U.S. efforts to stem migration. Hello? I feel like whatever little is holding me to this temporal plane is fraying. It's just incredible what's been going on, and I've been seeing it happen in real time. Let's go down here. CNN should probably get their talking points in order. They did the exact same thing. Vice President Kamala Harris' tough task of addressing migration to the southern border is not getting easier 1 year later. So they've been following it, and they said back in 2022 that she was having a hard time with the border. But now, Republicans have cast Harris as the border czar, but her task was specifically focused on addressing root causes of migration, and she's had some success. This is what they're doing. You have to understand. Keep your wits about you. This could make people go absolutely nuts. Then he talks about this piece from the Politico. Like I said, this has been widespread. Particularly rich is this from Politico, who claimed tying Harris to the border was misleading despite a headline from 2021 that called her the point person on immigration issues amid the border surge. And it says it right here. Biden makes Harris the point person on immigration issues amid the border surge. I could go on and on and on. There are so many media outlets, like you saw in the earlier videos of this video, the earlier segments. They're all out there saying it never happened, when indeed it did happen. It's getting so bad that a lot of people are having to speak up. General Michael Flynn had something to say about it. Flynn says we have to be on guard for the constant mainstream media lies and disinformation campaign. It's more than disinformation, it's a PsyOp. They are forcing down our throats. The constant lying is not aimed at making the people believe a lie, but at ensuring that no one believes anything anymore. A people that can no longer distinguish between truth and lies cannot distinguish between right and wrong. Powerful. And such a people, deprived of the power to think and judge, is without knowing and willing it, completely subjected to the rules of the lies. With such a people, you can do whatever you want. And that's from Hannah Arendt, a German historian and philosopher back in the 1900s. What he just described there is a PsyOp, making people get to the point where they can't discern right from wrong, left from right, up from down. And that point, they become more susceptible to accepting the lies of the regime. Sound familiar? Think about 1939. Can you even believe what you've been seeing during this video? It's stunning. Now, more than ever, you have to realize, do not take what the media says at face value. Just don't take it. Don't accept it. Look into it. Do your own research. This is insane. They are now trying to mess with your mind. They're trying to reprogram the brains of millions of Americans. This is pure evil. It's amazing to me at this point that the media is taking their orders from the Democrats. I understand they've done that for quite some time. But now the Democrats are telling them, not only do you have to execute this PsyOp plan, but it means you have to go back and erase and refute what you've previously written. The problem that they're having right now is that Elon Musk owns Twitter. The old regime would have just deleted the post and ban the people who posted it. And so what's happening now is that all of their older posts are right there for everyone to see, and people have screenshotted the receipts. Now, in regards to what I've shown you here today in this video, you have to realize I will never show you anything that I can't back up and show you the proof. And yes, there is clear proof that Kamala Harris was actually named the Border Czar. This is the actual bill passed by Congress naming Kamala Harris as the Border Czar. There's no deleting this. There's no getting around it. This is in the congressional record. It's actually a bill that shows that she was named the Border Czar. Imagine thinking that you could get away with this and that nobody would even check. They were obviously hoping that people would never see that bill. It would be just completely out of mind. Nobody would ever dig it up or take a screenshot of it. Actually, you can download it. And they are so aggressively running this PsyOp against the American people that they are actually passing out a cheat sheet of sorts so that all the Democrat congresspeople and senators know what to say if they get asked in the media. You got to check this out. This is absolutely mind-blowing. A Democrat lawmaker confirmed to Fox that Dems have received a piece of paper with talking points, a cheat sheet, with lies about how to discuss Kamala Harris's role at the southern border. They're already using the exact lines. Look at this cheat sheet that they put out, and they're passing out to their compadres. Vice President Harris was never appointed Border Czar. There's never been such a position. It doesn't exist. Border Czar title invented by Republican, and press repeats. Was not asked to lead on the administration's immigration or border enforcement policies. This is dumbfounding. POTUS tasked her to lead the administrative diplomatic root cause strategy in Central America, not border policy. She was tasked with addressing push factors driving migrants to flee these other countries, secure private sector investment, promoting democracy, economic opportunity, $5 billion in private sector investments. Role focus on changing conditions in other countries, not the U.S. border. I love that one. She wasn't even supposed to look at the United States border, but other people's borders. Border crossings by migrants from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, the countries in Vice President Harris's root causes portfolio, have decreased in recent years. In 2023, they made up 22% of all border crossings, down from 41% in 2021. They actually put out a cheat sheet to continue the ruse of the PsyOp.
She was never actually border czar.
Border czar, which was not something that was formally conveyed upon her.
She's been labeled incorrectly by some members of the right as the border czar. Republicans named her the border czar.
Republicans have always exaggerated what her job was at the border.
Republicans, again, have labeled her the border czar.
But that's not exactly what President Biden asked her to do.
She was never put in charge of the border.
That wasn't actually her task.
Not to secure it, but to address the underlying roots of migration.
She was charged with leading the administration's efforts to address the root causes of migration.
The root causes of migration to the U.S.
The root causes.
Root causes.
Root causes.
The root causes.
Root causes
of immigration.
We also want to point out that right now apprehension numbers continue to decrease in our country, especially over the last few months.
And I just want to note that border crossings have been going down.
And illegal border crossings are lower right now.
Migrant crossings continue to drop.
Border crossings are way down.
Border crossings are down.
Does that scare you? Does that show you where we are politically in this country at this point? They have no problem lying directly to your face, and they're making sure that all of the congressmen, congresswomen, and senators have a cheat sheet not to defer from, to make sure the story is consistent with everybody. Keep repeating the same lie over and over until everybody believes it. Again, you can go back to 1939 and read all about that strategy. We're at a point where we expect the press to be biased. And we expect the press to be, basically left-leaning. But my gosh, this is psychopathic. The communist media is so filthy, so disgusting, that you now have to assume everything that they say to you is an absolute lie. With everything that happened from the time of the debate through Trump's failed assassination attempt, there was a time, about a week, where the media could be trusted to say the right thing, to do the right thing. But obviously, with Kamala Harris now being the new nominee, or scheduled to be the new nominee for the Democrats, all bets are off. They're right back to propaganda and lying to the American people. Imagine how quickly America's problems could be solved if we had an honest media. But one thing happened today that really is going to cause a problem for Kamala Harris. The Republicans in the House passed a bill condemning Biden and Kamala Harris's performance at the southern border. And unbelievably, 6 Democrats joined with the Republicans.
If all members voted, any member wish to change their vote? The yeas are 220, the nays are 196. The resolution is adopted.
Can you believe they came together in complete unity and completely exposed the border czar hoax that the Democrats are trying to push on people? They effectively nuked the PsyOp. But you can be confident that the media and the Dems aren't done. They are going to keep pushing it as hard as they can because they have to do anything to prop up Kamala Harris. Don't listen to them for your own sanity. Ignore them. They are proven liars and they will do anything at this point to prop up Kamala Harris. It's absolutely amazing to see how desperate the Democratic Party has become.
It is wrong to somehow suggest that an undocumented immigrant is a criminal. Being an undocumented immigrant is not a crime. I know what a crime looks like. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. 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 An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal, and we have to correct course in this conversation.
We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.